do we do in CHARM project? Together with University of Birmingham and many other partners, we are working on finding ways to implement circular strategies in the social housing sector. In CHARM, we have three big goals. The first one is to test circular renovation and new building strategies on demonstration exemplars. Second, creating guidelines for circular procurement. And finally, the third one is developing material exchange platforms and generating a market ecosystem for circular materials. In the remaining of my presentation, I'll briefly introduce our social housing partners and quote their definition or approach to circularity. And also I will tell a few words about their tenants and how they are involving tenants in their demonstration projects. I'm sure Carl and other partners already talk about Ecourt, but a little short introduction here again today. Ecourt is a social housing and social care organization that operates in Midlands in the UK. It manages around 13,000 homes and provides service to around 80,000 people. In CHARM project, Ecourt wants to push the boundaries of innovation to see how far it can take the concept of virtually plastic-free homes. They're working on the development of 12 plastic-free homes. In this project, they are applying waste hierarchy and see circularity as being a reuse element. Especially thinking about the future use of the products. As for the tenant involvement, they have a cooperative approach that Professor Mullins will tell more about this later on. Ecourt sees circularity as an opportunity to offer better value for money and a way out of fuel poverty. The second partner of CHARM is Parihabita. Parihabita is the main operator for developing and managing social housing in Paris, with about 125,000 social houses. It's very large. One of the biggest challenges Parihabita has is the high demand for social housing in a restricted urban context. As CHARM demonstrator partner, they are working on light and deep renovation and transformation projects in occupied buildings on their real estate stock. Another important role of Parihabita in CHARM is promoting and supporting the development of material exchange platforms. As for their tenants in the CHARM project, Parihabita wants a better living environment for their tenants, better air quality, non-toxic materials, lively indoor spaces. Not only this, but they also want to raise their tenants' awareness about sustainable development and the importance of circularity to make them realize that they could actually have a sustainable way of living in their own homes. Let's continue with Zonke Kamp. Zonke Kamp is our project partner from Belgium. Unlike other partners, they are managing a small number of homes in Belgium, which is around 2,400 homes. Zonke Kamp considers circularity as a way of thinking. They have been applying circular strategies for years, even before the concept became popular. They are applying six-step approach, for instance, decreasing the demand for materials, using renewable resources, and using them efficiently, measuring and monitoring the process, coaching users, and in the end, sharing their results with the others. Zonke Kamp has a really strong relationship with their tenants. Tenants can walk into the office anytime, share their concerns. So this strong tie with them is really important for Zonke Kamp, and they think the tenant acceptance is really important in the circular projects. And finally, Woonbedrijf. Woonbedrijf is a social housing company located in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. They operate around 33,000 homes and give service to approximately 70,000 clients. Woonbedrijf has a very ambitious goal. The organization is aiming to be circular in 10 years. To achieve this goal, they formulated a roadmap where 10 R strategies, reuse, rethink, that kind of strategies, and Ellen MacArthur's Foundation's butterfly model are integrated. From the very early project phase in charm demonstration exemplars, 6 tenants were involved in the development process of charm. So tenants meet regularly with developers, architects, and Woonbedrijf to participate in the design and development of their homes. I would like to share a video with you that last year in the Dutch Design Week, Woonbedrijf prepared some interviews with the tenants and project partners. And in this slide, I would like to share how they would define the circularity.
Met meer dankbaarheid en respect naar de aarde kijken en van daaruit in onze behoeftes voorzien.
Zolang je groeit, gaat het goed. Ik denk dat de waardeontwikkeling op een andere manier gedefinieerd moet worden.
Circulair bouwen gaat over materialen, grondstoffen, maar ook over mensen.
Moet ik het zeggen?
Ja, zeg maar. Oh,
ja, ik heb wel. Ja. Gebruikte materialen kunnen recyclen.
Ja, eigenlijk in één woord, het is voor mij herbruikbaar materiaal.
Zorg dat het nadat wij het gebruikt hebben ook nog een plek kan vinden.
Dat we inderdaad gebruiken wat we al hebben. En als we iets niet hebben, dat we dan wel materiaal gebruiken wat we later weer alsnog kunnen hergebruiken.
Ja, dan moet ik denken aan een wondje. Dus alles komt weer op een positieve manier terug.
Kringlopen te sluiten. Ja. Het kan een mens zijn, het kunnen materialen zijn. Het kan een manier van werken zijn. Het zoveel mogelijk gebruiken van oude materialen voor het bouwen van iets nieuws.
Bouw de omgeving als grondstoffenbank van de toekomst.
Afval bestaat niet.
Niks weggooien.
En als we iets toevoegen wat niet in de kringloop past, dat het afgebroken kan worden door de natuur weer.
In mijn ogen is circulair dat je producten hergebruikt. Maar ook aan de andere kant het minimaliseren. Geen materialen gebruiken die eigenlijk niks toevoegen.
Wat strikt noodzakelijk is in een woning, dat we dat erin bouwen en niks meer en niks minder.
Voor mij is de definitie van circulair dat er geen definitie is.
Dus we gaan het gewoon doen om gaandeweg te onderzoeken wat het precies is.
Yeah, that was my part. Halima, would you like to continue? Thanks for your attention. I can stop sharing my screen.
How's that? Is that okay? You're back up?
Yeah, that looks perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Here we go. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fine, great. So I'll just close the windows for that. Okay, great. So in terms of the research aim, what are we looking at within the kind of broad remit of the CHARM project? What are we hoping to achieve by this particular sort of research strand? So we're looking at investigating the social dimension of the circular economy, looking at the social impact within the CHARM project. So what is the social impact of the circular economy within the social housing context, and particularly focusing on tenant involvement. And why? So what's the rationale behind this research? The rationale being that we have a sort of synergy between the aims of the CHARM project, which is looking for a legacy in terms of academic output. And also it relates to some of the themes that we've been involved in researching over the last 5 or 6 years around community investment, social responsibility, tenant involvement, community-led housing. So from that perspective, there's sort of a good research synergy between CHARM and our own sort of research areas of interest. Furthermore, there's a literature gap because this is a very new field in terms of the literature from sort of 2016 onwards. And there isn't a lot of literature about the social impact within the sort of circular economy. So there's an opportunity here to sort of do something new, so address that gap, and using the opportunity of these sort of case studies, that the longitudinal empirical research opportunity that this presents. So talking about the literature gap, there are a couple of papers, the one being sort of Kircher et al., which is sort of well cited, which do systematic literature reviews of the term circular economy, because as you can imagine, with sort of quite a new area and a new field, it's quite a fluid definition. It's quite difficult to pin down, and they've done sort of a coded systematic analysis of the definition of the term circular economy of about sort of 100 different sort of papers or so. And they conclude that ultimately the circular economy seems to be about sort of economic impact and economic prosperity, followed closely by environmental quality. However, issues of social equity in future generations are sort of quite downplayed and not really explored adequately. And just to provide just sort of some sort of explanation around what they mean by social equity in future generations, social equity being about sort of protecting, transforming, strengthening, and developing society, human well-being, which we would argue sort of strongly relates to sort of social impact issues, and then future generation as well, so sort of future social impact and long-term impacts of the circular economy. So bearing in mind there is this sort of literature vacuum, and we're looking at a new area of social impact within the circular economy, are there existing frameworks or perspectives that we could sort of use to map or to where to sort of locate our research? So some sort of constructs you might be familiar with, or terminology, social enterprise, corporate social responsibility, things like the triple bottom line. You see here Arnstein's ladder with the degrees of participation. So here looking at community-led housing, sort of ideas of co-production, cooperative housing, and even fields like construction methods and tenant well-being. So if we're looking at sort of modern methods, sustainable methods of construction, and how those impact on the well-being of tenants or residents. Okay, so social enterprise is an interesting one. I'll just pick a couple of these. Social enterprise, I quite like this word cloud because it's got the word hybrid in there. And those of you familiar with some of our research will know that we often use a hybridity framework to look at housing associations, which are sort of located between sort of state and markets and the voluntary sector. So, you know, it's about, well, here, this is a quote from a report from the socialcirculareconomy.com, which looks like quite an interesting project, arguing perhaps that the social circular economy is really circular economy juxtaposed with social enterprise, and this way it delivers sort of benefits for people, planet, and profit. Again, those 3 Ps sort of drawing back to the triple bottom line principles again. And again, you know, you can argue as well, housing associations are social enterprises and sort of the same sort of purpose, so businesses for social purpose, but ultimately with a social goal. Again, the people, planet, profit, that comes up quite often in the literature. And although in kind of seminal definitions from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation talk about the fact that circular economy, it's really important, the social aspect is a really important component of circular economic principles, in practice, in projects, and also in terms of the academic research around circular economy, it's been argued that the social impact, again, is only marginally considered. So this paper by Murley et al., again, another one of those sort of systematic reviews of about 500 articles and journal papers, trying to unpack the definition of circular economy, and talking about the fact that it's, you know, the social side of circular economy should be more prominent. However, it's only marginally considered, and more effort should be made about addressing again, the triple bottom line of sustainability, so arguing that this ties into sort of triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, and sustainable housing should be connected to those. And well, this is the argument we could make by locating this research within that framework. This is quite interesting. I mean, apologies, it's quite a text-heavy slide, but I don't think it's really fair to talk about the literature around circular economy without sort of drawing on this argument around social economy and labor. So if you sort of try and research about the social impact of circular economy, there's quite a bit about the labor aspect. So whereas we look at sort of normal sort of finite materials and resources that get used in a linear way, which the circular economy wants to change to sort of a loop system, here the argument is that it's really essential to consider labor as part of one of those materials that is sort of constrained and also dissipated, so it can't be recovered economically. And in terms of where this argument sits, it's in a discussion around social and solidarity economy. So if there's a reference here, if you're interested to explore this more, so I'm in early stages of looking at this, but it looks very much related to and associated with ideas around cooperative, co-production, citizen participation, and this idea of having equity with respect to labor and governance. So that's another sort of angle in which you could look at the social side of circular economy. So sort of moving from quite abstract ideas to some sort of tangible benefits. Zero Waste Scotland is a project put together by the Scottish government with the support of some European regional funding as well. And it's a sort of general circular economic plan for the country for the next few years. And they've identified in a recent report some sort of specific benefits, social benefits rather, of circular economy. And I've highlighted again here a few that will be applicable in the charm context. So for example, improvement in well-being, social inclusion, stability of tenancy. We've heard Sultan talking about just now, not Parihabita, you wanting to use non-toxic materials, so you can see sort of well-being and health impacts. And I sort of improvement in asset maintenance, stability of tenancy. So asset maintenance, obviously, in terms of the refits and refurbishments that sort of Parihabita and Zonke Kamp are doing as well. So these are sort of quite sort of practical things we can start thinking about. And then again, moving from sort of tangible things you can sort of relate to again thinking a bit more philosophically about what is it that we're trying to explore. If we're looking at the social impact of the circular economy and social housing, as Sultan just mentioned, you're going to have quite a significant impact because social housing organizations are sort of de facto, they are driven by a social purpose, so they are by definition sort of not-for-profit businesses. So ultimately, anything that improves their economic performance or their output, they would argue sort of feeds back into benefiting their sort of tenants and their communities, which is an argument they'll often use in terms of diversification into sort of other business models. Ultimately, this is all going back to the community and going back to the tenants. So do we need to actually look at sort of physical issues or tangible outputs, or is there kind of a broader perspective that we can adopt when trying to sort of research some of these and find answers to some of these questions rather? So we're thinking about whether we can map zones of impact. So are they kind of organizational level zones? Are there community level impact zones we can have a look at and try and frame and map? And specifically, we think that the Charm project provides an opportunity to look at the impact on tenants. And it's early stages now, but some of the feedback we were getting and some of the insights from the project partners is that tenant acceptance is really critical. It's really key to the success of the exemplar projects, the sustainable circular projects that they're all putting together. You can, as you can imagine, tenant acceptance will be particularly critical for sort of refurbishment projects where you're sort of getting upcycled or reused materials inside your home. Getting tenants to accept that rather than something new, for example, sort of a refurbished door rather than having a new door. The co-development and co-production aspect is key for One Bedrijf and also Ecourt being sort of cooperative as well. That influence the tenants have, the role they have in sort of designing and the role they play in their own homes that they'll be moving into. as you've seen from the video that Sultan played as well, we've seen, as we've discussed with the project partners, there are different stakeholders with different rationale around how tenants are involved. And this is quite interesting, is that ultimately tenants are looking for a comfortable, affordable home. So is it business as usual? Carl mentioned in his presentation yesterday that tenants are selected purely on housing needs. So rather than sort of specially selected or chosen for a plastic-free home, it's a business as usual in terms of tenants who will be housed in the properties. Which leads us onto the types of questions we are hoping to pose to the CHARM project. So we're putting together the questionnaire at the moment to give to the project partners, and we'll follow this up with some case study research too. And we want to look at what's the role of tenant engagement. So before trying to understand how the circular economy projects are impacting on tenant involvement and tenant engagement, or tenant impact more broadly, what was the kind of the business as usual de facto case before? So what are the existing tenant engagement mechanisms? What are the structures? What is the role of the tenant in circularity? Is that different from what you did before? Is it sort of fit into part of the same sort of strategy and structures and organizational mechanisms? How are the tenants of the CHARM partners involved in their projects? And then are similar models adopted? So is there a kind of circular economic model that seems to be emerging across the partner case studies? Can we compare and contrast that across these four? And we know already from Sultan's introduction that there, although we're sort of looking at Northwest Europe, these are all different organizations in different scope and scale and size. So it'd be interesting to see how this develops. And finally, the decision-making process on which tenants to house. So is it a kind of experiment like Von Bedrijf are talking about, especially selecting tenants and they'll provide 2 years of feedback on their experience of living in these sustainable homes? Or like Ecourt, are we looking at sort of housing need, explaining to the tenants, this is the type of home you're living in, but it's a usual allocation system, not a special consideration or sort of selection of ideal candidates, as it were. So what's going to happen from now? As I said, this is very early stages. So we're sort of started the literature review now. We're putting together a questionnaire for the partners. It's a really great time because they're all sort of starting and developing the projects. We'll see what the code, I think the site opening is officially tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a good time to be getting in and collecting this evidence on the social impact of the circular economy with the tenants in particular. And then ultimately to kind of disseminate this with further seminars and academic publication. So that's the grand plan. What I will do is I'll pass back to David now. I'm just going to see if there's anything that's popped up in the chat. I don't think anything specific for this session so far. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I will hand over to David. Thank you very much. David, okay to share, David, are you okay to share your screen?
Yeah, just trying to share the screen now.
No problem.
And here it is. Yeah,
Perfect.
and the microphone is working as well. So that's 2 out of 3. That's not too bad. Good to see everyone at the event today. It's great to take part in something called an Inspiration Day. When colleagues, particularly at Delft University in Birmingham, to talk about what we did, we like the term pracademic. And this is really about trying to operate on the boundary between practice and academia. And one of the issues about being a pracademic is which hat are you wearing? And my hat today is very much on the practice side in my role as a board member with Ecourt Housing Association. I'm also a member of the Birmingham Cooperative Housing Services Partnership Board. This is not RCH, which is depicted on the slide. The structure within Ecourt is that we have 2 secondary kind of cooperative supporting bits of the organisation, one in Redditch and one in Birmingham and the Black Country. And this is how we get a large organisation like Ecourt, top left-hand side, to respond locally and engage residents at the level of Redditch, which is going to be the focus of our case study today. So what I'm going to try and do is is the second slide come up? Second slide up? Yep, good, great. What I'm going to try and do is to really build on Halima and Sultan's introduction, to look a bit deeper at how the resident engagement with circularity might work in different organisational contexts. And I'm going to focus exclusively on the context of Redditch and Redditch Community Homes and the Pioneer Co-op, which is developing the plastic-free homes project. So I think the main point I'd take from this introductory slide, if we think about the circular economy diagram at the top right, we're focusing mainly on the consumption, the red consumption area here. And in terms of circularity in housing, if there is not engagement with the users of the housing, with the materials, with the way in which those materials are used, then some of the objectives of circularity are going to be at least watered down, if not totally undermined. So there's a need to focus on resident experience, preferences and behaviours. I just spotted Hannah's comment on the first presentation, thinking about the extent to which you could see controlling behaviours by top-down large social landlords trying to manipulate residents' preferences and behaviours. I think that's clearly is a danger, and I think it will be interesting to look at what processes can enable resident engagement to enhance choices, lifestyles and lived experience. So this presentation is focusing on part of Ecourt, the part that is involved in the Plastic-Free Homes project. So this is locally based in Redditch, and it's one of the Redditch cooperatives. I hope that this will seem relevant to other organisations in the CHARM project, and thinking about how within your own organisational structure, resident engagement can be enhancing the circularity process. I've been focusing particularly over the last few years on the rather rapid, in historical terms, growth of community-led or collaborative housing across Europe. And one of the interesting things, and I think really important in terms of Halima's introduction, that this is one of the cross-cutting agendas that the CHARM project could link some of the thinking about circularity and social impact to. One of the interesting aspects of community-led housing is how often there is a focus on environmental impact and environmental awareness of the people who choose to get involved in their own housing in this way. So some of the more obvious aspects of this would be the eco-villages. I think the work that we've done at Birmingham on the refurbishment of empty homes and thinking about the better use and improved use of existing urban fabric, the innovative construction methods, straw bales and so forth. And then in Leeds, we've got the example of the Climate Innovation District that the Leeds Community-Led Housing Hub is linked to. Thinking about cooperatives, residents clearly have a strong interest in energy efficiency and linked to their fuel consumption. So circularity and community engagement are a natural partnership, and I think this can be taken forward into the recent focus on circularity. Going back a little bit to Ecourt and why would a large housing association, it is quite large, 13,000 homes at the moment, why would it have this model of working with resident-led housing cooperatives? So 13 at the moment, providing 1,400 homes. That's only just over 10% of the entire Ecourt housing stock, but I think it's significant in comparison to other large and medium-sized housing associations in the UK. But it's not only the resident co-ops, but there's also a focus on supporting new community-led housing projects outside of the organisation. We're doing that in partnership with West Midlands Urban Community Homes, which is like an enabling hub for community-led housing. So why does Ecourt do this? It's not a mainstream agenda for larger housing associations. Well, I'm not going to read it, but there's a detailed set of arguments from the chief executive of Ecourt as to why it's important to work with residents. And the bit I pick out from that quote is about the local, harnessing the local intelligence of people who live there and the impact that that can have on delivering all kinds of objectives in terms of housing management, rent arrears, and circularity will be part of this. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good, good. I think someone may have their microphone on as well, but just getting a bit of feedback there. So how does this work practically? Well, as I mentioned, there are two parts of the Ecourt organisation that focuses on working with cooperatives. We have the Birmingham Cooperative Housing Partnership, and we also have, since the last 20 years, the work in Redditch. So how it works in Redditch is you've got finance and development being undertaken by the Housing Association, as it would for its mainstream stock, but we have a local intermediary, secondary housing co-op, if you like, Redditch Cooperative Homes, that's providing the management services to the 5 neighbourhood co-ops. The other significant, really important partner in what's been happening in Redditch is the local authority. And it was in the early 2000s that they wanted to increase the supply of social housing in Redditch, and they wanted to do it in a way in which they would not lose the stock through the right to buy. So the cooperative protection from the right to buy was a really attractive incentive for the local authority to produce social housing in perpetuity. And this has led to 20 years of successful development in which we now have 5 neighbourhood co-ops providing 750 homes, and we have a well-established management support service through Redditch Cooperative Homes. We're a significant player in the town centre and therefore a natural partner for the regeneration of the area around the railway station in Redditch, which is about to excitingly move ahead. So the plan here is for 250 cooperative homes on 7 sites, mainly being put together adjacent to each other, as you'll see on the plan there. And the entire development will be cooperatively managed. So from the Charm project perspective, we can see opportunities to look at the difference a cooperative management structure will make to the circular project, which is in fact just one of the sites, which is going to have 12 virtually plastic-free homes. Just one final general organisational point to back up the Chief Executive's statement about why they support working with co-ops. There is evidence in terms of research evidence of the impacts that this can have on a whole range of objectives, including the labour market, one that Halima kind of focused on in terms of one of the areas of research on the circular economy. So the overlap between circularity and cooperatives in terms of local economic impact and training and employment opportunities for residents will be interesting to look at. So what next? Well, plastic-free homes. So excitingly, planning permission in July this year for the project, which fits into the growth plans for the Redditch cooperatives. The site at Edward Street will be for 12 one-bedroom affordable homes, minimising the use of plastic. These homes will be manufactured at the Ecourt local homes factory, which I think you're going to have a virtual tour on Friday, an opportunity to see how local homes has developed with low carbon technology using timber framed houses, and how Charm provides the opportunity to take this a step further in terms of the focus on eliminating plastic from components, kitchen and bathrooms. Plastic-free electrics, I think, is the big brain teaser that is being investigated. How far we'll go on that, I don't know. But the intention of the outgoing Deputy Chief Executive, who managed the local homes was that the project would change the way we manufacture our homes forever. So we've got the manufacturing capacity, and now there's an opportunity to transform the way in which that capacity is used to produce the kind of wider social and environmental impacts that Halima and Sultan were talking about. The specific focus of this project on plastic, I think, is valuable in terms of the importance of plastic in housing construction, its use in many key components, and despite the benefits that plastic can bring, it causes major problems in terms of the disposal, so that not biodegradable kitchen and bathroom units being changed every few years, generating plastic waste. So how can we make sure that the housing is part of the solution to plastic waste rather than adding to the problem? So I want to end by trying to look at this intersection between the Circular Economy project and resident engagement. So how has Redditch Cooperative Homes, how is it approaching the challenges for designing and living in plastic-free homes? And I've started having some discussions with the cooperative about this, and it's something which I hope will continue through the CHARM project. As Halima mentioned, the residents for Edward Street will be selected from the council waiting list in the usual way, based on housing need and other criteria such as homelessness, social isolation, managing antisocial behaviour. The residents will, from the point of pre-allocation, which is going to be happening over the next month or so, they will have the opportunity not only to learn about cooperative living, but also about the plastic-free homes in the project. So Hannah, here's one of the tensions that you've raised between, is this going to be a controlling experience, or is it going to be an enabling experience for residents to maximise the opportunities of living in the plastic-free homes? So that's about the existing residents, but the longer term residents of the cooperative have been involved in planning the town centre regeneration project and in the earlier waves of development in Redditch. Some of the cooperators took part in the early visit to Norway that Ecourt facilitated to look at off-site construction and modern methods of construction. This led eventually to the development of our first local homes factory, which I think produced about 100 homes a year, and we're now on the second factory, which is about 1,000 homes a year. The residents have been part of the design working parties, and the board of Redditch Cooperative Homes is involved in the design process. So we've got resident engagement built into the organisational level, but for the residents of Edward Street, they come into the story at the point at which they're pre-allocated their properties. Part of the usual preparation for cooperative living will be preparation for living in this particular project. And there will be opportunities to engage in the later stages of the design process and to personalise their properties in terms of kitchen materials and so forth. I don't know if Hazel is here, because we didn't do the introductions at the beginning and I've been looking down my screen, but Hazel Langdon is the RCH worker, and Carl, of course, you all know, is the CHARM project lead. So there'll be opportunities to ask questions about the detail of what I've been talking about to Carl and Hazel afterwards, maybe by email or in the discussion session we're going to have. But just to pick out a few points of discussion about this intersection between resident empowerment and the circular economy, I wonder how equipped your organisations are to engage residents in the design process for circularity, and then to think about the living process with the circular construction forms that appear from the project. How can resident engagement and cooperative decision making affect the impact of design on wider society and the planet? And I suppose the most provocative way of leaving you is, can there be circularity in housing without engagement by the people living in the homes? Thank you. Shall I stop sharing?
That's great. Thanks, David.
Thanks very much.
That was really thought-provoking. Thanks so much, David. That gave us a lot of sort of detail and insight into Ecourt and how the cooperative is working with residents for the new site. We're actually running about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which is great. So if that's okay with everyone, I think what we'll do is we'll have a break now, just to give everyone time to kind of reflect on some of those questions. And if you see on the program, we were going to break at 10:40. And if we have a 15-minute break now and then resume at 10:40, if that's okay, feel free to kind of add we'll keep the Zoom call open. So just sort of switch off your microphone or sort of mute your microphone and switch off your video if you'd prefer to. If you want to sort of jot down your questions or add them to the chat tab, you're welcome to do either of those. And the plan for the question and answers is to start off with the questions that have been logged already in the chat. And then we'll sort of take live questions generally. So you're welcome to ask questions of the speakers. And also, I do believe there are representatives from all the case study organizations in the virtual room today. So if there's project-specific questions, we can pose them to those colleagues as well. And then we've left the further discussion points up to that David has just raised at the end of his presentation, some of the sort of broader thinking type questions about this relationship between resident engagement and circularity in social housing. So if that's okay with everyone, we'll take a break now and resume in 15 minutes at 10:40. Thanks very much. If there are any pressing questions on that, specifically just a clarification questions on those presentations before we break, feel free to speak now. No? Everyone good? Great, so I'll see you all in 15 minutes. Thank you.